This one is pretty simple. Democrats are the party of war. Democrats are the party of starting wars, not ending them. In fact, the four deadliest wars in the United States that we've been involved in the last 100 years all started with a Democrat in the Oval Office. World War I, Woodrow Wilson was president. World War II, FDR was president. The Korean War, Harry Truman was president. Vietnam, LBJ was president. Have Republicans been perfect over the last century or 200 years for that matter? No, of course not. But many of the deadliest conflicts in American history have started with a Democrat in the White House. And in many cases, Republicans have been the one to end those wars. Lincoln ended the Civil War. Eisenhower ended the Korean War. Nixon ended the Vietnam War. And it looks like Donald Trump is about to end the war in Ukraine. And the media seem absolutely stunned by that development, shocked that someone campaigned on doing something and is now trying to actually achieve that.
But we're stuck in that war unless I'm president. I'll get it done. I'll get it negotiated. I'll get out. We got to get out.
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
As president-elect, if I win this election, the first thing I'm going to do is call up Zelenskyy and call up President Putin, and I'm going to say, you got to make a deal. This is crazy.
So after 3 years of Ukrainian flags in people's yards and Republicans and Democrats in Congress wearing Ukrainian lapel pins, after 3 years of raising the president of Ukraine to almost mythical status, how dare evil Donald Trump try to end the war in Ukraine? President Zelenskyy is a saint, according to the media, for the last 3 years.
This relationship has not been good from the very beginning when Zelenskyy refused to play ball on the Biden investigation. And so, Donald Trump is somewhat on a revenge tour. Let's just all admit that.
And yet you have the president repeating talking points that, really the Kremlin could have drafted. Calling for an election right now in Ukraine as Russia occupies nearly 20% of Ukrainian territory.
We have Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov agreeing with Donald Trump or saying that, he understands them. There's a couple of things going on there. So if Donald Trump thinks that he can placate them, that he can try to make some deal that it actually isn't backed by security guarantees and power, he is lying to himself.
What most Americans don't know is that 1 million people are either dead, injured, or missing in Ukraine. 1 million people in our own media doesn't like that Donald Trump is trying to bring an end to that killing because President Zelenskyy is fighting for democracy. How many times have we heard that? He's fighting for democracy. What does that even mean? I remember the narrative around Ukraine being that it was one of the most corrupt countries in Europe before the war started. So corrupt, they put Hunter Biden on the board of one of their biggest energy companies. But do actual real democracies just cancel presidential elections? Most people here probably don't realize this happened because our media is dishonest, but President Zelenskyy canceled the Ukrainian presidential election last spring, citing the war as his reason. According to Zelenskyy, the time just wasn't right for an election because of the war, and just like that, the presidential elections were canceled in a supposed democracy. I'm sorry, but that's not something that happens in a real democracy. You don't cancel elections, and guess what? That has never happened in America once. The White House was literally burned to the ground during the War of 1812 by the British. Washington was occupied by the British. And 3 months later, while it was still occupied by British redcoats, James Madison won the 1812 presidential election, and Republicans are finally snapping out of it. 3 years of amnesia. They're finally starting to notice.
Sorry, Trump called Zelenskyy a dictator.
Oh, I see. I wouldn't go that far, but they didn't have elections. I think the president's point that they suspended elections is not good. We had elections during the Second World War. Britain had elections. They should have an election. But Putin's the dictator.
Donald Trump saying on Truth Social today, quote, think of it, a modestly successful comedian, Vladimir Zelenskyy, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go to war that couldn't be won, that didn't have to start. On top of this, Zelenskyy admits that half of the money that we sent him is missing. He refuses to have elections, and the only thing he was good at playing was Joe Biden like a fiddle, a dictator without elections. Zelenskyy better move fast, or he's not going to have a country left. And that's just how Donald Trump operates. But our own media the same people who've been calling Donald Trump a dictator for the last year, can't believe that Donald Trump would dare call Saint Zelenskyy the exact same thing. Now, I wouldn't dream of calling President Zelenskyy a dictator here on this show. We wouldn't do that. But what do you think the media here would call Donald Trump if he suddenly canceled the 2028 presidential elections? What do you think they'd call him? Because they already call him a dictator, headline after headline, for more than a year. Donald Trump is a dictator. Here's President Zelenskyy speaking this week in Munich.
Does America need Europe as a market? Yes. But as an ally, I don't know. For the answer to be yes, Europe needs a single voice, not a dozen different ones.
Vice President J.D. Vance telling the Daily Mail today that the, quote, idea that Zelenskyy is going to change the president's mind by bad-mouthing him in the media, everyone who knows President Trump will tell you that it is an atrocious way to deal with this administration. The New York Times today writing that many of Trump's media allies were quick to celebrate this week's negotiations, a contrast to the deep unease expressed by the foreign policy establishment. Do you remember images like this from the Afghanistan withdrawal, summer of 2021? All of what you're seeing right now on your screen are courtesy of that same foreign policy establishment that the New York Times was just referencing. Just one of what would become a string of embarrassments for Joe Biden. The foreign policy establishment. Lloyd Austin, Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, and the big guy himself. That's your foreign policy establishment. The New York Times, for whatever reason, also thinks it's strange to celebrate the end of a war where 1 million people have been killed. Now, the war's not over yet, but 1 million people have been killed, and to the Times, that's a bad thing. People in conservative media are giddy over this. I'm not giddy. I'm just glad to see the killing come to an end, if and when it does. It will eventually. Facts are stubborn things. John Adams said that, and it is a fact that the deadliest war in Europe broke out on Joe Biden's watch, meaning this is Joe Biden's war. And the media also never mentioned that the war in Ukraine was approved by Joe Biden himself, our modern-day Neville Chamberlain, the Neville Chamberlain of our time. Joe Biden endorsed this invasion when he told Russia that a, quote, minor incursion into Ukraine might be tolerated. Listen closely.
I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades. And it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, et cetera.
Okay, that right there is why you do not elect a man with dementia president of the United States. And Joe Biden's minor incursion has cost the U.S. taxpayers close to $200 billion, half of which the president of Ukraine has apparently lost, which is something that no politician in America, Democrat or Republican, for whatever reason, are comfortable talking about. The only person in this country that the American people have elected talking about your money is Donald Trump.
But I think Europe has given $100 billion, and we've given, let's say, 300 plus. And it's more important for them than it is for us. We have an ocean in between, and they don't. But where is all the money that's been given? Where is it going? And nobody, I've never seen an accounting of it. We give hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see any accounting. So I want to see peace. Look, you know why I want? Because I don't want all these people killed anymore.
I don't remember Lindsey Graham asking those questions, or Mitch McConnell. The facts on the ground right now in Ukraine are unfortunate. Russia controls much of the eastern part of the country, and they have no reason to give that land back to Ukraine right now, meaning what will likely happen, I don't want this to happen, but this is what will likely happen. In the end, what will happen could have happened 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, with Russia taking part of the Donbass region in the eastern part of a country that most Americans couldn't find on a map when the war broke out 3 years ago, and most Americans still can't find on a map today. Now look, our hearts break for the people of Ukraine. This never should have happened, but America's involvement in this war has got to come to an end. The days of America playing Russian roulette, literally in this case, with the world's greatest nuclear power, have got to come to an end, even if that makes some of our allies a little bit uncomfortable.
What did all of this accomplish other than irritating our allies?
Why would our allies or anybody be irritated by free speech and by someone giving their opinion? We are, after all, democracies. The Munich Security Conference is largely a conference of democracies in which one of the things that we cherish and value is the ability to speak freely and provide your opinions.
Making our allies uncomfortable is the concern of CBS News. I've got news for you, Margaret. The American people don't care about making our allies uncomfortable. Guess what? They'll get over it. Leave it to America last, Margaret. More concerned with what the people of Great Britain think than what the American people think and want. Guess what, Margaret? They will get over it. America has spent $200 billion in counting on this war with no receipts. We don't know those weapons are in Ukrainians' hands. We don't know where they are. We hope they are. We hope they're not in the hands of other people, terrorists. And if it doesn't stop now, it could go on for decades. People forget, when Russia invaded Afghanistan in 1979, they stayed for 10 years. I'm not pro-Vladimir Putin. He's a killer. He's a tyrant. This war was unprovoked. But I'm also not pro-myth-making. And over the last 3 years, I feel like President Zelenskyy has been turned into this almost mythical figure where in reality he's fallible, just like the rest of us. He's a man. And while Americans were told for years that it was rude to ask about U.S. taxpayer dollars being sent to Ukraine, I think many Americans are tired of seeing images like this.
Glory to Ukraine.
For your support.
The truth is, this whole thing was probably preventable. We'll never know. Diplomacy and appeasement are not the same thing. And instead of making Russia an ally long ago, from Clinton all the way to Biden, U.S. presidents have all done the same thing, and they've driven Russia into the hands of our enemies, China, Iran, North Korea. So here we are, 3 years into this debacle of a war, and the politics of 1939 still rule the day. As the world warns that Russia will attack Poland or some other NATO country, if we appease Vladimir Putin, it'll be just like appeasing Hitler in 1939. It's been the exact same conversation for 80 years, certainly for the last 3 years, and it's going to continue for the next 3 years or 8 years or 10 years unless this war is stopped right now.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.